Hello, I'm Silas Wollston, and I'm here to introduce this week's Cantata of the Week. I played the harpsichord and the organ on almost 40 of the projects in the Cantata pilgrimage, which for me was a completely unique year of music making. And it's wonderful that it was all captured in this series of CDs. And this is the CD that contains this week's cantata, which is Wachet, betet, BWV 70, which we performed in Lüneburg, which is a small town just southeast of Hamburg, and a town where Bach himself lived between 1700 and 1702, which were the last 2 years of his school days. And he sang in the St. Michael's Church, which was where our concert took place. And it was the opportunity to play in churches that had such a direct connection with Bach and his music that was really one of the great privileges of that Bach cantata pilgrimage for me. When Bach arrived in Lüneburg, he was 15, but he still had a fine soprano voice. Sopranstimme is the word used by Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach in the obituary he wrote for his father. And that obituary also includes a little description of Bach's voice breaking. It describes that for 8 days he had a strange new species of voice and could neither speak nor sing except in octaves. The cantata was written when Bach was 31 and working in Weimar at the court, and it was performed on the second Sunday in Advent in 1716. Bach then later revised the work, expanding it soon after he arrived in Leipzig in 1723 by adding recitatives in between the arias, and it's this version, the expanded version, that we performed in Lüneburg. The text is by the poet at the court of Weimar, Salomo Frank, and the subject of the cantata is the end of the world, second coming, the day of judgment, which is either a very exciting prospect or a terrifying one, depending on what fate you think awaits you. The opening chorus of the cantata is full of excitement and anticipation at this second coming. And the music is fizzing with energy. Sounds rather like a concerto, an Italian concerto, the sort of thing that Bach was making arrangements of during his time in Weimar. And there's a trumpet fanfare figure that punctuates the movement. The mood of the alto aria is a very different sort of idea of the Day of Judgment. It's longing for liberation from this world, from the evils and tribulations of the world. And this aria has a beautiful cello solo, which is always striving upwards as if trying to reach some sort of peace. I think the most dramatic moments in the cantata, though, are those in which Bach depicts the Day of Judgment as a moment of absolute terror, where there'll be no place for the sinful to hide. And these two depictions come in the two bass recitatives. The first one follows straight after the opening chorus, and the bass declaims as if he's the preacher in the pulpit, and the strings beat out rhythms that sound like a heart pounding in terror. The second bass recitative is even more vivid in its depiction of the end of the world, and that follows on straight after the tenor aria that comes at the beginning of the second half of the cantata. And it's partly to do with the context that the tenor aria is full of rather sort of smug sense of security that I'm going to be fine, and that lulls the listeners perhaps into a sense of complacency. And then, bam, Bach shatters this sense of complacency with absolutely terrifying depiction of the end of the world. Again, the bass is declaiming, the strings are pounding with rhythms like a terrified heart pounding away, and there are also strings, precipitous scales running around, rather like the in the Passion settings, the depiction of the renting of the veil, the destruction of the temple. And then on top of all of that, over this mayhem, comes the sound of a trumpet blasting out the sound of this chorale. which the Leipzig congregation would have recognised as, because they would have known the words, that this was the chorale associated with the Day of Judgment, where there'll be no place to hide. So I've just scratched the surface on this fantastic cantata, but I hope you're intrigued to find out more and to listen to other cantatas in this unique repertoire, and to listen to other recordings that we made during the pilgrimage.